Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you all, Jonathan, chair of this great section, and I want to welcome you all. I mentioned this at the fall conference in Seattle a couple months ago that SEER, we like to have a lot of fun, we like to do a lot of things, but we also like to give awards. And so I want to welcome you all to our virtual award ceremony where you're going to hear about phenomenal work by individuals, by organizations. And this is our opportunity to highlight the great work that they do. I first want to just thank Robin Craig and Pam Esterman for really leading the awards committee in the past year. It really requires combing through really like phenomenal individuals and organizations and figuring out who can we highlight because of the great work that they do. So I first want to thank you all and your committee for the work that you've done this past year. Um, I also want to let attendees know just a little bit, just a brief summary of the kind of the format. You're going to hear from section leaders who are going to introduce and announce the award recipient, and then each awardee is going to make a 5-minute acceptance speech, roughly 5 minutes, and then it will pass on to the next presenter and awardee. I want to encourage you all to really stick around to the end. This isn't just a one-way conversation. At the end of this, we're going to go into breakout rooms, and you'll have an opportunity to really speak with each awardee and hear a little bit more about the phenomenal accomplishments and work that they do. I now want to turn this over because you didn't attend this event to hear from me the entire time. I want to turn things over to Shoshana Schiller, an awards committee member who is going to present the first award during the ceremony.
Thanks, Jonathan. I am very honored to present the State or Local Bar Environment, Energy, and Resources Program of the Year Award to the Pennsylvania Bar Association for the Pennsylvania Bar Institute's two-day Environmental Law Forum, which we affectionately known as ELF. ELF brings together a wide spectrum of presenters and attendees, including federal and state regulators, state agencies with environmental overlay, professors, NGO lawyers, in-house counsel, environmental engineers, and private practitioners from all over the Commonwealth. In returning to in-person programming after COVID, the ELF planners look to find new and better ways to engage all members of the environmental bar, and so structured ELF into concurrent tracks specifically designed for those interested or working in policy, climate, development, and infrastructure and litigation, alongside panels on new case and regulatory law, technical issues and developments, and a roundtable with all of the judges of the Commonwealth's Environmental Hearing Board. Efforts were made specifically to engage a new generation of practitioners by providing special programming for younger lawyers and extending invitations to law students from the region, many of whom the section sponsored financially so that they could attend the ELF. Because it takes so many people to put on such an extensive program, 3 people will be accepting this award. First is Scott Gould, current chair of the Pennsylvania Bar Association's Environmental and Energy Law section, followed by Matt Holliday, the executive director of the Pennsylvania Bar Association, and finally, David Mandelbaum of Greenberg Traurig, representing the ELF Planning Committee.
Shoshana. I'm Scott Gould. I'm a partner at McNeese Wallace and Nurek in Harrisburg. On behalf of the PBA Environmental and Energy Law section, we'd like to say thank you to the ABA and to SEER for this wonderful honor. And thank you, Shoshana, for the great introduction and for the nomination as well. This coming April will be the 30th anniversary of the ELF. It's hard to believe. I've attended 29 of those, didn't quite make it perfect, but nevertheless, 29 of them. But the ELF serves not only as the sort of premier 2-day environmental CLE program for the state, but it's also an important gathering for the Pennsylvania Environmental Bar. Shoshana mentioned it brings together a gathering of all kinds of environmental practitioners, but also students. Our section sponsors 20 scholarships, 2 for each of the Pennsylvania law schools and 1 for Camden as well. To have those there, then they attend not only the Environmental Law Forum, but we also have our section annual dinner and meeting associated with the ELF. So as such, the forum is more than just a CLE for us. It fosters collegiality and amongst the Pennsylvania environmental attorneys, but also provides valuable insights and opportunities to the environmental practitioners of the future. While I'm the current chair of the section and I get the honor of accepting this award, frankly, all of the credit really goes to other people. The PBA and the PBI staff, particularly Stacy Thomas and also Melissa Spinelli, our dedicated planning committee, which you'll hear from David in a moment, as well as the hundreds, literally hundreds of people who have presented at the ELF over the years. So again, on behalf of the section, thank you very much for this recognition, and I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for your leadership of this section. It's such a very special section out of the 18 that the Pennsylvania Bar has and over 50 plus committees. And I'm also very grateful to David and his leadership of the planning team, as well as the 2 staff members you singled out and a number of other staff at PBI and PBA who helped the program. I've only been the executive director for just about 2 years, and during that time, I've probably gone to over 100 events for the organized bar. And I have to tell you, the ELF is so special that it actually took me about 15 minutes to get all the attendees to stop talking to each other by turning the lights on and off in the ballroom to get them to shift into the other room for the annual dinner. That's how much congeniality there is between them. That's how much they enjoy seeing each other every year. And we're just thrilled to be able to be a part of it and ensure that the practice of law and environmental and energy fields are so enhanced by this excellent program year over year. So with that, I'll turn it over to someone who spends countless hours planning every single detail of the event, including, I'm told, a 3-hour meeting planning what we're having for dinner every year. That's the level of excellence they bring. I'm going to turn it over to David.
I disclaim any responsibility for dinner. Thank you, Matt. Thank you to the committee. Thank you to the ABA for recognizing this event. This event gets organized because of the efforts of the PBI staff, Stacy Thomas in particular, and Matt Wolford, who's our liaison to the section council, and then the planning committee, which operates without a chair. I just was the guy who missed the meeting, and so I got assigned the task of accepting the award. That committee for the past ELF was Alex Giratini of York Water, who has since stepped off. She has been replaced by Jessica O'Neill of Penn Future, an NGO in Pennsylvania, Kevin Garber of Babs Cowan, John Herman of DEP's Pittsburgh office, Carol McCabe of Manco Gold, Kurt Sullivan, who is the chief counsel of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and me. As Scott pointed out, the real feature of this event is that it allows us to capture the collegiality of this section, which is remarkably collegial, even though we're pretty diverse. There's a lot of difference between Philadelphia and Erie, or Pittsburgh and Scranton, with Harrisburg in the middle. There are a lot of different kinds of practices. Some of our clients hate each other, but we have been able to maintain a very congenial professional relationship among the environmental and energy lawyers in Pennsylvania for as long as I've been doing it, and I've been doing it a while now. What the forum does is allows us to remind ourselves why that's good, and then to capture the benefits of it, which is there are more than 70 lawyers every year who act as panelists. So we're essentially giving CLE to ourselves. And then we have more than a few of our sessions which elicit a good bit of back and forth. You're going to hear from John Dernbach later. He's a back and forther. So it's way more than 70 people who are educating each other. And then, it's Harrisburg. So we socialize with each other because, like it's Harrisburg. So it's an excellent event. It keeps us together and keeps our bar moving forward. So thank you for recognizing this.
Hi, I'm John Cruden, and it gives me a great deal of pleasure to announce the Government Lawyer of the Year Award. I take a great deal of personal satisfaction for 2 reasons. First of all, because when I was chair of the section, I created this award. And second, I'm about to give it to someone who was a valued colleague of mine at the Department of Justice, Stephen O'Rourke. Steve has a long and distinguished career at the Department of Justice, serving in many different administrations. I can't think of a part of environmental law that he has not touched as a litigator, as someone who settled, as a mentor to others, as someone who is deeply admired within the Department of Justice. There's many things I could single out. I want to do two, and then I'll tell you the third that everybody's heard about. But in what was then the largest natural resource damage case in the United States, the pesticide DDT onto the Palo Verde shelf off of California, United States versus Montrose, again, at that stage was the largest NRD case in the world with about 100 companies involved. Later, significant Clean Air Act case against Mercedes and a settlement that was over $1 billion of penalty and injunctive relief, also a case that Steve was involved in. But on Steve's tombstone of life, somewhere that will be, this man was the lead counsel for the Department of Justice in the Deepwater Horizon case. Most of you still can remember April 2010 when the Deepwater Horizon erupted thousands of gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. Over 1,000 miles of 5 different states were impacted. That resulted in 3 different trials that Steve led, 500 depositions. The size of that over many years is breathtaking. When the Attorney General Loretta Lynch announced a settlement that exceeded $20 billion, she announced it as the largest case of its kind in the history of the Department of Justice. Not the largest environmental case, but the largest case overall. In order to do that, Steve had to assemble countless experts. He had to put together a team that he practiced and rehearsed relentlessly. And he has still been involved because the ultimate settlement had, in particular, BP paying money over a specific period of time. And that means that that money to be used appropriately is something that Steve has guarded relentlessly. So Stephen O'Rourke, it is my pleasure to announce you today as the Government Lawyer of the Year.
Thank you very much, John. It's really nice to hear those words, especially from you. You know, it's very flattering, and coming from you means even more. I should say I did take notes, so the next time I need to, I can quote that back to you for whatever reason. But I'd like to also thank the ABA this year for this award. It's quite an honor. And when you get an award for sustained career achievement, you have to think, well, how did I get here? Well, to be frank, I just feel like I've been very lucky to get here, including, you know, Seneca said that luck is preparation meeting opportunity. And I've had that because of all the people who prepared me over the years and give me the opportunities over the years. Speaking of the people, they're just, at first I thought I should just list the people and say how they contributed to my career, my life. But there's too many to name. I just can't do that. We'll be here for hours. So I thought I'll just kind of just go through it. I mean, even in law school, they were preparing me with all the classes I took at the Tulane Law School in environmental, and I was on the journal and in the clinic. And my professor, Bob, who's at WashU now, he said, you have to apply to the Justice Department, get in the honors program and go to the Environment Division. So then I had that opportunity. And literally on the first day walking in, on the elevator up to get my key, Adam said to me, "Hi, you're on Montrose with me." That's one of the cases that John just mentioned. And so I spent many years on that, and they prepared me. They prepared me. They taught me how to litigate, how to go to trial, how about natural resource damages. We had a big settlement, and got to work with state agencies, NOAA, Interior, all sorts of excellent attorneys at Justice. And they prepared me. So when John came to me and others, Bruce and others came to me and said, tapped me on the shoulder to say, how about jumping on the Deepwater Horizon? I had been prepared, and there was just another opportunity, meaning preparation. You know, I had done Montrose of the other oil spill cases and some other litigation and trials and Bachelor of Science in Chemistry. So I felt I was qualified. But above all, it was in New Orleans and I had lived there, so I knew all of the best bars. And I think that really paid off at my time on the Deepwater Horizon. But obviously, that was a very educational opportunity for me, working with all those agencies, with all those 5 states that John mentioned, and with the 3-step trials. And each team had a trial, each phase of the trial had a trial team, excellent attorneys. Even though I was nominally supervising them, of course, I was learning from them at the same time. So I had other cases, like you mentioned, Daimler, but some of the small cases were also quite rewarding too. When somebody goes into a national park and cuts down sequoias or destroys some coral reefs in the marine sanctuary. I had a groundwater case that was about an entire city, the drinking water of an entire city. Those cases were also extremely important. So after all these years of being here, I still think it's a great job at the Justice Department. I think I'm starting to sell if anybody's listening and wants to get a job here. Every case is interesting because you learn something new, not necessarily legal. You learn how to make cars, you learn how to about bird biology, you learn how to make pesticides, you learn about toxicology and economics, and you meet all the experts in the field. Things you just might not get in other jobs. And you get to work with great clients, EPA, Fish and Wildlife, NOAA, Coast Guard, DOI, and all the states I've worked with. It's been wonderful. Of course, the co-workers from the Environment Division of Justice, I don't owe them all a debt of gratitude. And especially when I'm getting this award, I look back at the past recipients, and it's just focusing only on the people from my own office. John is one of them. Brighton, Bill Brighton, Karen Wodzinski, Bruce Gelber. I feel like I'm being put into a pantheon of luminaries, and that's really a great honor for me. And it just reminds me of when I heard an interview with George Harrison asking about his time with the Beatles, and his quote was, "I was just lucky to be part of it, really." And that's kind of how I feel. I've just been lucky to be part of this whole thing on the way. So I'd just like to thank the SEER for this a great honor. And I guess with that, I'll conclude. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Philip Bauer, and today I have the pleasure of introducing the 2024 Law Student Environment, Energy, and Resources Program of the Year Award. And this year, the award is presented to the NYU Center for Energy and Environmental Law for its student-organized symposium, Our Toxic Food System, Perspectives on Pesticides and Pathways to Change. The NYU Environmental Law Journal Symposium editors were Corbin Ryan, Emma Dietz, and Natalia Terazakis. The Law Student Environment, Energy, and Resources Program of the Year Award is given in recognition of the best student-organized educational program or public service project of the year, focusing on issues in the field of environmental, energy, or natural resources law. This year's program, put on by the NYU Environmental Law Journal, is worthy of the award. The symposium, held on February 28, delved into the many complex dimensions of the pervasive use of pesticides in our food system and the environmental and human health harms that come along with it. New York State Senator Brad Hoylman Siegel delivered the keynote address, followed by 3 excellent panels addressing both problems and solutions. The first panel addressed environmental justice and pesticides. The second addressed state regulation in the shadow of the EPA. And the third addressed pesticide practices for a sustainable food future. Speakers included state officials, representatives of national environmental and food safety NGOs, attorneys, and academics. The panels focused on environmental justice, failures of and opportunities to improve the regulatory scheme, and the sustainable future of our food system. The symposium was well attended and the audience was engaged throughout the day. The journal received very positive feedback about the event in the days following. The symposium is deserving of recognition for bringing to light an underrepresented, nuanced, and critically important topic. The symposium was open to the public and accessible both live in person and over Zoom. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Olivia Guarna, who will accept the award, along with Emma, Corbin, and Natalia, the editors of the symposium. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Phil. Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia, and I'm the former editor-in-chief of the NYU Environmental Law Journal. Thanks so much for having us here today, and thank you to the ABA for this wonderful award for our symposium, which, as Phil said, was last February, called Our Toxic Food System: Perspectives on Pesticides and Pathways to Change. So each year, the NYU Environmental Law Journal holds a symposium on a topic that's important to the journal staff at the time and also the environmental law community more broadly. And in all our events and also our scholarship, we try to contribute meaningfully to the field by offering novel and creative solutions to the many environmental challenges we face. Before we started working on this symposium, I'd had the opportunity to work on some pesticide legal issues, and it was something that I had become very passionate about. So I was really excited when I believe it was Emma, one of the co-leads of the symposium, who's on screen, who suggested that this be the topic of the symposium. And as we were considering it, we realized that this would be a great program, especially for law students, because there's a really complex and interesting body of regulatory law and litigation on pesticides. But more importantly, the pervasive use of pesticides in our food system has wide-reaching impacts and can have very dire health consequences on farm workers and workers in the food supply chain, on consumers, and on our environment. Our goal for the symposium was to create an opportunity to think deeply about these issues and hear from experts about how we can move towards a better food system. So I have a lot of folks to thank for the success of this symposium. First and foremost are the three people on screen with me: Emma Dietz, Corbin Ryan, and Natalia Terzakis, who are wholly responsible for pulling off such a cool event. We also wanted to thank Senator Hoylman-Siegel, who delivered the keynote address, our amazing lineup of panelists who had such insightful and thoughtful conversations about how we can realize a safer and more equitable food system. As an aside, you can, if you're interested in the topic, we published a symposium transcript in our most recent issue of the journal. And they had such interesting conversations, so I recommend. We also want to thank our journal advisors, Professor Vickie Bean and Katrina Wyman, for their guidance, a number of co-sponsors of the event, the Intellectual Life Fund and the Office of Student Affairs at NYU for their support. And finally, we're so grateful to the American Bar Association and SEER for recognizing our event, and to everyone who took an interest in the topic. At the end of the symposium, one of our speakers remarked that she had had a very long career dedicated to the pesticide issue, and in that time has never been to an event that was entirely dedicated to the topic. It's certainly a niche area of environmental law, but we feel very strongly that it deserves attention. And we really appreciate how engaged folks have been with that work. So thank you so much again to the ABA.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pam Esterman with the law firm of Sive, Paget, and Roselle in New York City. I've served as co-chair of the awards committee this year, along with Robin Craig. It's my privilege and honor to introduce you to our next awardee, Vickie Patton. Vickie has been selected to receive the ABA SEER Award for Excellence in Environmental Energy and Resources Stewardship. This annual award recognizes and honors a person, organization, or group that has made significant accomplishments or demonstrated recognized leadership in the areas of sustainable development, energy, environmental, or resources stewardship. I want to note that this year SEER bestowed 2 awards for excellence in stewardship. The other award was given at the fall meeting in Seattle to the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission. Vickie serves as general counsel at the Environmental Defense Fund, or EDF. She also leads EDF's U.S. legal and regulatory programs. Vickie has been a true warrior, climate warrior, I should say. She is ever so passionate about fighting for protections that reduce pollution and protect our health and climate at the state and national level. For over 30 years, Vickie has worked to secure landmark national and state protections with respect to climate and air pollution. She has participated in numerous successful Climate and Clean Air Act cases and testified before numerous congressional and state legislative committees. Throughout her career, her actions have been successful in driving litigation and new legislation to protect human health and the environment. Vickie has helped EDF start and grow organizations where there are gaps, bolstering community voices. These environmental organizations are committed to collaborations and projects around the world that help and build a more durable future for people and the planet. She's also co-founder of Moms Clean Air Force. The Moms Clean Air Force is a community of 1.5 million moms, dads, and caregivers united by a commitment to ensuring that every child has a shot at reaching their full potential free of the scourge of health and environmental harms. She's also spearheaded a program called Community Voices in Energy, co-created with Black and Green, to help community members make their voices heard in public utility decisions where equitable energy, clean energy transitions can help communities thrive. Vickie is the recipient of numerous awards, including the 2023 William K. Riley Award for Environmental Leadership. Prior to joining EDF, she worked in EPA's Office of General Counsel, where she implemented the historic 1990 Clean Air Amendments and received the Gold Medal for exceptional service. We are so pleased to be able to recognize Vickie Patton for all of her work with this award. And we now open it up to Vickie to make a few remarks.
Pam, I am extremely grateful to you, to Jonathan, to the committee. Thank you so much for this recognition. I also want to congratulate the many people who make ELF initiative possible by helping us as attorneys to overcome differences and work together and to collaborate. Steve, thank you so much to you for your extraordinary public service. And my just immense congratulations to Emma, Natalia, Corbin, and Olivia. The symposium that you put together is a beacon for how we can really highlight issues that are of vital importance to many people and communities and often overlooked. So thank you so much for your vision. I'm just going to touch briefly on community and just offer a couple of comments and considerations for the students. I have the enormous privilege and joy of being a small part of a wonderful community, and that includes just amazing colleagues at the Environmental Defense Fund that I get to work with every day. Wonderful colleagues in the environmental NGO community who are dedicated advocates. Many of them are attorneys who do such important high impact work. And then I have the great privilege of working with an ecosystem of people in the private sector and the public sector, a whole bunch of different dimensions that really are an important part of making sure that we're all moving forward and making progress. This recognition is just a direct reflection of that much larger ecosystem of mentors, colleagues, partners, allies, and to each of them, I am just extremely grateful from the bottom of my heart. I am so appreciative of each of you for all of the things that you do to make such important progress. For the students who are here and the students who are considering this journey, I just want to say as clearly as I possibly can that there is a place for you doing this work. You belong. Whether your interests are in science, community organizing, tax credits, safer food and equity, negotiating contracts for clean energy projects, public service, engineering, all of those areas, you can put them all together. Not only is there a place for you, but we need you. We need you. So please reach out. We want to be a resource for you on your journey in the same way that so many people guided us on our journeys. Just know that everyone who's here wants to be a resource for you. And please join the important work to advance sustainability and to forge a better, brighter world for all people. And thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. I am Amy Edwards, a partner with Holland and Knight in Washington, D.C., and I have the privilege today of introducing John Dernbach, who is being awarded the Award for Distinguished Achievement in Environmental Law and Policy. For those who don't know him, John is an emeritus professor of law and the founding director of the Environmental Law and Sustainability Center at Widener University Common Law School, where he has taught environmental and climate and sustainability law and policy for over 30 years. He's been quite a leader in this space. As I said, his emphasis has been on sustainability for over 30 years. He founded the Environmental Law and Sustainability Center at Widener, and he has emphasized sustainable long-term resources that have produced a series of books, starting in 2002 and continuing with a co-edited book in 2023. He also served at what is now Pennsylvania's Department of Environmental Protection, which was known at that time as the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Resources, as the head of its policy office. John has written profusely over the years, more than 50 law review articles, and he has peer-reviewed journal articles and has contributed or co-authored or authored over 20 books. One of those is the Legal Pathways to Deep Decarbonization in the United States, which was published in 2019, which is a comprehensive assessment and description of more than 1,000 legal tools that can be used to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050. He has contributed to several other books as well, including Acting as If Tomorrow Matters, Accelerating the Transition into Sustainability, Agenda for Sustainable America, Stumbling Towards Sustainability, and more recently, the Sustainability Essentials, a leadership guide for lawyers. And I highly commend this book to all of you. Give it to all of your lawyer friends. They don't have to be environmental lawyers to benefit from the knowledge of what's in that book. He's contributed to 3 landmark judicial decisions, including writing an amicus brief in Massachusetts versus EPA. And most importantly, from my perspective, he was very helpful. As a matter of fact, the key author of the climate change resolution, which we passed when I was chair of SEER in 2019. We would not be where we are without the incredible contributions that John gave to that particular resolution. As a matter of fact, when I was chair, I gave him an award for outstanding contribution because of his prolific endeavors to help us get a resolution through the American Bar Association House of Delegates. More recently, he has worked on and had passed through the House of Delegates a sustainability resolution, which is an even broader platform for continuing to promote the sustainability work that is important to so many of us. John has worked closely with me since the climate change resolution passed in 2019 to work with lawyers from around the globe to emphasize the importance of climate change and sustainability measures by lawyers. So we've worked very closely with the International Bar Association of Brazil, and Law Society of England and Wales, among others, to be sure that the ABA is represented at the Conference of Parties that's held every year to advance our goals towards the Paris Agreement climate change goals. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to John to give his remarks.
Well, thank you, Amy. That was very kind. This is an enormous honor. The award is gratifying because it means that my friends and colleagues in the ABA recognize the value of my work. And it's humbling because many other lawyers are doing excellent and important work. The programs and the other individuals awarded today exemplify that. And I have to give a shout out to the home team, the Pennsylvania Bar Association, for the Environmental Law Forum. Other folks that I can think of are those who received the awards at the section's fall conference in Seattle and the other fine attorneys at this event. It is really, truly humbling to be in such company. The environmental law world is different now in many ways from the world in 1978 when I graduated from law school, and particularly from, that's, by the way, 46 years ago, which is longer than I want to admit, but I just did. And especially for the law students and younger lawyers, what I'd like to do with the few minutes that I have is talk about some of the changes that have occurred and are occurring and what that means for the work we do, and particularly at the ABA. Then environmental law was an emerging field growing out of statutes that had been enacted less than a decade earlier. Lawyers in government and private practice were constantly confronted with novel issues. And there are certainly plenty of novel issues, but now the field is more than half a century old. And there's a much greater body of statutes, regulations, and practice experience. Then environmental law was mostly confined to a handful of federal pollution statutes and their state analogs, and the practice was limited to environmental lawyers. And now environmental issues are apparent today in nearly every legal practice area. They're often combined with energy issues, and they're driven largely, but not entirely, by climate change. And so to address these issues competently, lawyers in these other practice areas need additional knowledge and training, and law schools need to modify their training accordingly. Then environmental law was primarily about preventing and controlling the environmental impacts of private and governmental activities. Now, we also tend to be more aware of and address the social dimensions of those activities. Then our object was to control the worst environmental impacts of activities whose basic method of production, say fossil fuels, was largely taken for granted. And so we thought it was a good result when we got scrubbers on coal-fired power plants. Now we're working harder to reduce how much energy we need, to change how we produce energy, how and what we manufacture, how and where we build things, how we grow food. We're moving, in other words, from pollution control to sustainable development. Then the primary agent of environmental protection was government, with predictable opposition from the private sector. Now, many parts of the private sector are playing an active and often leading role in environmental protection based on private law and governance. Public-private partnerships, including citizens and non-governmental organizations, play a more active role in environmental protection. And of course, then there was bipartisan support for environmental protection, and now, of course, these issues are treated differently. And yet, in spite of all that environmental law has accomplished, our environmental problems are in many ways worse and more civilization challenging than they were in 1978. You all know the details. And so while we celebrate individual and organizational achievements today, much more remains to be done. The challenge for all lawyers, I think, is to help design and build the legal infrastructure and help create a future that is clearly more attractive environmentally, socially, and economically than what we have now. And as you know, a lot of that work is already being done. Clean energy, green buildings, mixed-use zoning, local and organic food, sustainable communities, and ensuring that communities get the benefits of clean energy. There's no one right legal practice area for this. And here I echo Vickie with emphatically, there is no one right type of legal skill. There is, in fact, no one right thing to do. But on the legal side, all lawyers can and should play a role. And I appreciate Amy's shout out to the Sustainability Essentials book, which is, I think, a really good guide on how to get started. And oh, as a side point, I'll say I'm not getting any royalties for this. So this is like not really as financially self-promoting as you might otherwise think. Finally, in a Zoom call the other day, our colleague Janet Davidova, who can't be here tonight or today, cautioned against setting our sights too low. She grew up in Russia and said she didn't know anything about baseball except what she had learned from her son. But she asked in this meeting, are we trying to hit home runs? That's the exact question we need to answer, I think, if we are to meet the moment. I look forward to you all, working with you all to hit home runs and help train and mentor others to do the same. And thank you so much again.